Ciao, everybody. Well, The Good Doctor did it again. The movie, the series I'm watching on Netflix. my my Spanish cradle influence seeps through and screws up my. Anyways, um, I finally, I finally got it. I finally understood something that for a long time has been bugging me about recent ideological feminist what do you want to call it, if we could just bunch everything up in gay rights, abortion, feminism. um, I mean, I had an experience even back when I was 21 years old in New York, where I opened an elevator for a lady. I stood aside at my first day at work at a big architecture firm. I'm remembering, and this same woman caused me to lose my job at the end of this job. But anyways, I remember I stood aside to let her go through chivalry, But not that anybody taught me. I grew up in a society that was very much the protocol that if girl gets into a car, I mean, we still do it. Anyways, um, and so and the whole thing with Bill Cosby and in all of these cases, that borderline on something that you just feel, wait, something seems excessive, too way off to one side, and not and nothing at all on the other side. For example, the subject of abortion. I mean, first of all, we're talking about the baby is what should matter to the argument, and it's all about the woman's right to do with her body, and the baby's treated like a property, and so you start hearing um, all of these defenses towards the argument, and you notice, where's the guy in all this? Where is the male? What about the male's love, emotion, passion for even being surprised by the fact that he left a woman pregnant and maybe he wants to be a father? How should the woman just run off and secretly have an abortion, as if males don't matter at all in the making of our offspring, the offspring of human beings? Anyways, so all of these subjects, and I kind of bunching them all in a category, all seem to be focused on sort of vindicating women for abuse or some, or whatever, injustice, or and it's all developed. It's all developed in that, and you see TV series and Netflix series, and there's all of the little scenes of interaction have typical back and forth dialogue that supports um, their points and so forth. And I wasn't really sure. I mean, I kept analyzing this through these last years, and all that really became clear is that men seem to be silent upon something that is women judging, and the discourse does exist that we are emasculating and men are becoming like expendable and they have no more leadership in society, and all of these arguments about that seem to be consequential of the impoverishment of the male role in society, and how much that is tied to criminology, to the crime rising in society, lack of personal character development. So it's not like completely untouched as a would be unaddressed half of this overall scheme that I'm looking at. But I couldn't really understand what was happening in this situation precisely, where a man flirts and it is interpreted. I mean, I feel terrible for what is happening to Governor Cuomo now. It's the same thing. It's like all of a sudden there's this whole construction, all of these mechanisms, all of these strategies in order to rope up the male that is going to be lynched. In this case, Governor Como, and he is impotent. He can't say in the camera. He can't say to the camera, "Oh, well, maybe I was too hopeful, or this was just flirting. Oh, she gave me signals. To me, she was responding." Males don't defend themselves at all in these arguments. They become neutralized by this overwhelming push in society to make it a female victory, right? And so there's this scene in The Good Doctor right now where the head doctor um, has one of the residents, this really beautiful girl that's one of the sexy, what do they call him? Not intern, like first time doctors. I forgot the name of it. Anyways, there's like a little group of first time doctors, surgeons, or what have you, and so they're earning their, oh Jesus, I forgot the word. I forgot the word. Anyways, and then there's the doctors that are there that are like, the lead of the team. Uh, and so they have to operate, and so the patients are sort of the nucleus around which these little scenarios, these little social scenarios and subjects, social issues are dealt with. Um, and so in this case, the head doctor is really supportive, like a dad, like you can do it. And so she's surprised that the doctor gives her the other leg to operate on. Well, normally they're really dominating on oh, geez, I can't remember the word still, the other doctors in the team. And so he's like, it's like a privilege that you bestow your assistant doctors to do stuff that is important, like not just let them suture or let them clean the organ or let them watch after post operation, watch over the patient, but to actually intervene surgically. And so she's all surprised about him being so encouraging. And when she gets unsure, he says, "Go ahead, go ahead, do it." But at the same time, they mix in, after the operation, he's very appropriate, very chivalrous about it. But eventually he says, "Would you like to have a drink after work?" And she becomes like thrown off. Before this, she had mentioned to her colleagues, who said to her, "Oh, you're lucky to be working with him." She says, "Yeah, but he likes me in a way that because in one of the scenes he put his hand on her back, and it wasn't sexual. It was just like friendly and gentle, a little maybe bordering on sensual, but it wasn't sexual really. It didn't go down the back or anything. He gave her an encouraging sort of leave his palm on her back." It's very provocative, the body language they use to judge whether it's one thing or the other, which is what this topic is all about. Where is it one thing and where does it become something else? And so she just makes these faces to the camera, like saying, "Oh, I don't know if I like that, whatever." And at the same time, she sounds appreciative of his encouragement. Um, and then when he says that, she's like, "No, I have something else to do," and cuts it really dry to let him know that she's not interested. And he proceeds to say, um, "Oh, come on, why were you looking at me so sweetly? Why were the classical thing where supposedly men then start blaming. This is how it is explained, but this is not how I'm explaining, okay? Explaining it. And I'm not mansplaining it. Typically, it is said that then the man will shift the blame onto the girl and say that she was looking at him with another scene on in You. And You is another Netflix show that I'm watching. Um, Blowjob eyes. You were looking at me with those eyes, and she gets offended. And then she becomes rejectful, and he becomes offended, and all these things are natural human dynamics. When you offer, I mean, there's no sexuality in this interaction that they're having towards the end of the scene or after the operation in the operating room. It's just a dynamic, basically, of conversation, but it takes on the sort of the expectation giving and offending with rejection kind of dynamic. Um, and and then afterwards, there's this whole thing where her friends start advising her that maybe she should go to the human resources and file a complaint. And I'm thinking to myself, what did he actually do? First she was okay with what's wrong with touching each other? I mean, let's just go there. How can something is off. We're careening this towards a direction where a lot of red flags are starting to come up. Like, we have to be judging how we're touched now because it could mean something, and if we have to be judging if it's sexual, if it's an advance, and it's almost like we've gotten to the hysterical extreme of judging the intention. Now we're saying if the movie or the TV series decides to make that dialogue one of insistful seduction, like really, really trying to see if you can convince the other person or the girl to say yes, it's all of a sudden judged morally. And we're only talking about words here, about speaking, but we have gone to such an extreme that it is really provoking, because it's telling us that something is off here. It's like running sideways. It's going off and screaming louder as it's kind of like about to fall off a cliff or something. And when these things have happened in other movies or other scenes, one thought kept coming to my mind. She has a problem saying no. In scenes like this in other movies, similar situations, I would think she just has a problem saying no. If you listen to that expression, she has a problem saying no, what's the first thing that you think? You think that I'm a pig that is blaming her for not being docile enough, or not being, it's her fault or something like that. And it is actually it has never been what I was sensing to mean when I thought that. Because if you think about it, to say that somebody has a problem saying no can mean that it is somebody who is easy and will always say yes. She has a problem saying no, so she always says yes. She's a slut, which is how we immediately interpret that expression. But if you think of it like saying no is the correct and proper necessary thing to do, and yet she has a problem saying it, it means that you have a problem in effectuating or performing something, which could be saying no or could be doing anything. It seems, and it finally made me realize something. If we are pulled by forces and dynamics that are placed in evolution, and at the very, very bottom, at the fundamental, essential chemical or sort of biological configuration of how our brains function as far as men and women, which ideologies are kind of assaulting, actually, but that's another discourse. We have always been, and we know that this is at the very, there's a reason evolution made us this way, that men will sort of charge forward, they will insist, they will go outwards, they will try to conquest conquer the female. They will propose, they will insist until she says yes. They're the ones that supposedly keep trying, and the image of the little Victorian girl that keeps saying, no, I'm saving myself until I get married or whatever. All those things come from something that is unchangeable, really. It's a way that men and women are designed. Now, we have tamed ourselves, we have domesticated ourselves to behave in a very equalizing way, so to the point where we have started ridding ourselves of what seem to be unnecessary, would be natural protocols, to where we don't have to do all that. You can just ask, and if the person doesn't want, and women have learned to be more direct, to discern right away. If she likes the guy, she'll go out with him. If she doesn't, she will say no. But basically, the bouncing off base of us is that there's, for that consideration, women are therefore more, are better perfected by evolution in saying yes. They're better at saying yes because it's what is necessary for males who want to put their seed, spread their seed around. So they're very good at advancing. And perhaps there is some truth to the fact that males, once they achieve that, though we may be naturally also designed by evolution to stay together, perhaps even in many cases for life, totally naturally, it still seems to be the male nature to be better at just getting it in, getting it done, and then there's maybe a tendency to get a little bit too comfortable, or maybe be more inclined, or more tendency to, to not be faithful, to go look for other women. And so the paradigm moves in that area. Once he got the job done, it may be very easy for the male to kind of open up and perhaps stay with a girl forever, even, or just real easily see what other good-looking girls there are out there, right? And we're all familiar with this. And we're all familiar with the paradigm, too, with the two things can actually both be true. With a woman, it's more about, being able to receive, being able to be the catcher, sort of say, in baseball. And therefore, if you're good at being able to receive, instead of penetrate and, conquer, but to receive the arriver, it means that you actually need to be good at saying no, because you have to be good at why you say yes. In other words, you look for the right father for your children. You look at the man's character, you test him a little bit, and a lot of things that are also created by evolution. And so in this dynamic, there isn't really anything wrong, and we have never seen anything wrong with women being a little bit more flirtatious, more seductive, men being more forward, a little bit more aggressive, not physically aggressive, but more aggressive towards achieving the seduction. And so now what we have done is we have laid over that, almost in a hysterical way, this idea that it turns out that men's character is no longer about a forthgoing or an insistence on achieving and accomplishing, but it is about being dominatingly destructive. And so if a man insists, even verbally, we have conditioned our society to believe he is sexually assaulting. He needs to be judged and condemned for even expecting that the woman might not be sure, or if the woman said had any doubt, or was too soft, or said no, it is seen that he would insist upon that. It's seen almost as criminal, when In the non-ideologically hystericalized society, it's a play that we have always had, and there's nothing wrong with a guy saying, well, maybe, guys must perceive something, must perceive that the women are very able to say yes, and not sure why evolution did that. And so they feel that there's always a chance, and maybe there is always a chance that the girl say, well, okay, well, I'll give you a shot. I'll try you out, see what you're like. We'll go out on a date. So guys have learned to always insist because of a back and forth with human nature. But we have gotten to the point, and I wish you could see, this is episode 10 of season 1. Um, this scene is pretty audacious because the guy does nothing sexual. He does nothing sexual. And yet they are able to construct the Weinstein, the whole Bill Cosby, the whole thing around this scene where she goes and would file a complaint, and the boyfriend comes, and if you ever talk to my girlfriend that way again, I'm gonna do more than just push you against the locker in the doctor's locker room. Or there's a guy that she sleeps with but doesn't want to get committed to. That's one of the doctors, and they fool around, and they have sex in the hospital. And so one of the things that the guy who got offended, the doctor that tried to go out with her, says at the end when she starts going off, like, you think that she starts getting very angry, like he would be insulting or assaulting her, and that of course is offensive to the guy who, it's a very interesting area because to look at, because there's something that happens naturally like this and can go ooh more and go that way, and then go that way, and it's just the way we are. And we can go like that, and then it will happen, and we'll start rolling and going forward. And now we don't let it do that anymore. What we have become hysterically judgmental about what would be a pretension or an expectation for somebody to have sex with you. Yeah, so what? So I really hope that person has sex with me. What's wrong with that? And trying to structure that, society's trying to structure that in a really rigid way through language and judgmentalness. It's really horrible. And now, I'm thinking of Weinstein, for example, and this whole thing where if a woman says anything, they won't listen to her. She's a poor victim. And there's a lot of lackadaisicalness in sexuality, perhaps because we all intuitively know that it is something that has forces that will want to insist one way, and maybe, they end up succeeding, and we're trying to solidify all that instead of letting it roll naturally through its evolutionary forces. And because we have established these ideas that, for example, women are, the funny part is that we are actually reinforcing us to believe the things that we're trying to supposedly get rid of. For example, that women are easily pushed over and treated unfairly, or these sorts of things, by every single argument being structured on the premise situations of the woman not needing bravery and courage to speak up, and therefore she needs to ally, with other women who would have conceivably also been harassed by the same guy, so that they can build a case against this monster, and that this is happening is outrageous. It's so crazy, and it's so insane that we're not seeing it. That people are not seeing how off we're just going off like that, off the deep end on just exaggerating without any end to it towards one side, and completely leaving out the other half of how nature and evolution made us interact, male and female. We're not really focused on how this human being that is us, made of two genders, male and female, interact together. We're not symmetrically identical. We're not identical. We're not symmetrical as two genders. We have a different shape. That kind of like has a thing. And women is more like round and a sphere and a circle or what have you. And then she has two centers. A conceptual center that will be another being within her. So she's like 2 points for her being, where males are just one. And so right off the bat, we have like a line or a point, and on the other side we have 2 points and a circle, and somehow nature made this harmoniously and naturally, organically complementary. And so what we always have described throughout human cultures are these interactions. And what we're doing now is assaulting these interactions because we want to impose a rigid, symmetrical equality, sort of like that skit from Saturday Night Live, where the cone heads children would call their parents their male parental unit, and their the female parental unit. It's funny, but that's exactly what these ideologies are based on, without even knowing that they're doing that, because they want to impose ideas of individual right, individualism, evolved into personal civil rights and personal human rights. And so it's just steamrolling over this organic complementation that we are. And it makes sense, actually, that if, in order to force a rigid, symmetrical ideology, what becomes evident is maybe the sex that was always the follower, the listener, the more empathetic gender will start becoming the gender that has a lot to say and a lot to achieve because of the demands of this symmetrical scheme structure, where the other one that was building society, building civilization, and into engineering and constructing and sort of leading the world, does not see too much how this benefits. In other words, it's very hard to explain, especially for me. But what you also notice is this diffused silence, this impotence that men. It's very, very interesting, and it's very interesting when your analysis of it is something that stands on or plays off the natural design of nature and what would be the expectations of these new ideologies, and what that does to the existing nature of both genders. It's very hard to explain. I'm not an intellectual. I can't really. I can see it. I can see it. Actually, I can totally see it. I totally get what is happening. And it's very hard to explain. But the thing is, if I could only succeed in explaining and making people see or discover how off and how wrong, how assaulting and destructive forcing natural ideology on the natural design is, I think I will be content with that. But it's also interesting to start seeing what it does. Like, for example, if you if you, I don't know how to say this, but let's say you have two little creatures, a couple of, I don't know, whatever, hamsters or something. And so the male is doing all that. And then this ideology proposes to put a skirt around the little male. The skirt around the female maybe will just casually be worn, and she'll see what it's for. But the male hamster with a little skirt around them will all of a sudden flip it over and try to make it a crown, or try to build a house with it. And so the ideological imposition, the scheme imposition of an ideology that is would be a symmetrical judgment, or symmetrical idea placed on each gender, will do something to one gender and will do something different to the other gender, and that's what's interesting to see happening. In this case, we see the males being very quiet, and then seeing that they must adapt because to something that seems to be what society wants. I don't think males or females are doing this. I think that we as a species are doing it to ourselves. We believe that our intelligence is, is king. Our intelligence is God. We just put it up on an altar, on a pedestal, and obey it. We have never understood that our intelligence is also the one that destroys and creates problems and gets it wrong and continuously. And so, because we still believe that our intelligence must be listened to and cannot tend to be wrong, but it tends to be right and go somewhere better, instead of causing problems consistently, and while it gets something better and it causes two problems at the same time. Since we've never seen that, we still believe that our new ideas must be followed. And so as a species, we have taken individualist ideologies of individual freedoms and self-expression and all these ideas that have come from individualism, and have started applying them to the organic human being. The organic human being is a single being, a human being, which is inseparably made of two genders, which are different forms, and different forms that are made by complementing, or to complement one another. But when you apply the same rule to both genders at the same time, what you do is you affect, for example, pregnancy, which happens inside women, and therefore women, because of their nature, will take that even rule that is applied to as an individual principle, let's say, of individual right principle, and turn it, process it, and all of a sudden the baby becomes the property of the woman, and nobody can touch her, because once she had sex, the male doesn't matter, the baby's hers. And you go and you say, wait a second, that's not how the species is designed. We are evolved to become parents. We know that when we know the woman is pregnant, both are aware that the woman is pregnant. Both start seeing each other. Hey, we are pregnant. That you have in your belly is ours. It's not yours. Can I be a part of it, please? No, it's not like that. But this applying a rigid ideology across like both genders, without first honoring the single human being as a complement, as something that needs to first be respected and honored and understood in its complementary form between the two genders, and then saying, well, that means that this principle of ideology, let's look at what it means, this principle of individual rights, which actually we start in a collective rights, but I don't want to get into that right now. But let's say that we understood that rights of individual individualism ideologies, and so forth. Let's say we understood that they fall underneath the priority of the collective to be healthy and integral and, respectful of each other and da 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 da, da. And then we can say, hey, but this one is different, and so you know making sure that he respects or she respects the collective first. Let's honor that person's individualism within the collective. It's a different way of ordering it, but in any case, I got lost here. Okay, so yeah, so this is it's once thinking about coming from a different direction, I was saying, well, yes, if yes and no should belong to a man and a man or a woman, you would say yes is, some would say yes is the man, because he just wants to go forward and just have and take and conquer and plow forward, whatever. And no is the woman because she protects her inside and da 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 da. And if that were the case, protects herself, her survival, and what goes inside her and so forth. And therefore, an enlightened humanity that what was able to achieve moral superiority as created by our logical intelligence, the same one I always say has a tendency, let's say, to fail or be in disbalance or get it wrong. Let's say that it found the point, it found the spot aligned with the organic design of evolution. It would mean that we would have achieved a civilization in which men say no and women say yes, because men would, in other words, will always be very careful as to what woman will stay with them, and what woman will have, and what woman will be respectful, and what woman will be, and so they are the ones that are measuring and saying yes or no, and decide who to have sex or family with, what have you. And women would be in a safe world where no men would ever possess them, bully them, force them, use her. And so she would be free and comfortable to just be able to say yes all the time, as opposed to the yes that is about the male only going forward. We would switch. So I remembered that when I thought about, women just have a hard time saying no right now still, far from being able to say yes as my optimal, perfect future civilization would be. And what that means is that they just maybe they're being forced to say no because they have been forced to take a leadership role of judgmentalness against males. And so now they are saying no at things like guys being insistful and stuff, and that's okay, but why is she bad at saying no? And basically my point is this: because she can't just say no and laugh it off. Can't you just, this guy, that's what this scene was so perfect, because he wasn't physically forceful. This was why this scene was so perfect, because he wasn't physically forceful. He wasn't sexual. It was all verbal, except for that part where he puts his arm on her shoulder. And yet she gets all bent out of shape. Oh my God, you mean something sexual? You mean going out on a date with me? Well, I should be indignant, that you would expect me to be sexual with you when I do not want to be sexual with you. You see what I'm saying? It's gone to that extreme. Hey, let's relax. If women were good at saying no, they would have, at the third visit at Harvey Weinstein's office, and the guy keeps playing stupid little games and trying to see if he can approach it this way and approach it that way. And she knew not how to just say, hey, it's a guy, he's going to keep trying. Oh boy, he's not going to quit. Stop trying to get a job with that company. And why is that seen as wrong? Why does the expectation that a woman after a while just cuts her losses and says, hey, I don't have to work for Harvey Weinstein. The guy's not going to change. Do I even really want to work in a place like this? I have the freedom to say, no, that is the better call. That is the best call. Oh, no. But we cannot allow that. We have to condemn Harvey Weinstein because she wanted to get away with having the job and forcing him to behave a certain way. And that's what we're expecting from society. We're expecting from society that women just have it all, basically. And men have to be, pegged in this area of behavior and can only, make a sexual advance verbally if the woman gives her space to do it. And if she's offended by it, well, he better realize it because otherwise he's going to jail. It's insane. It's insane what we're doing. I feel really terrible for Harvey Weinstein because it seems to me, I think there was maybe one case where he was a little physical, or two cases where he was a little physical, or maybe grabbed a girl by them, don't leave or something like that. But really, he didn't force himself on anybody. They basically threw him in jail because of being, crass and unsure and begging and all whatever. But how can they throw somebody in jail for life for not really doing anything, but because of a social hysteria and ability and empowerment that has been constructed in contemporary social culture for these dynamics to work, for the woman to be able to judge a sexual advance and categorize it as rape, practically, because she didn't like that he wanted her. She didn't like that he wanted her. Okay, he's a human being. We're supposed to have a part of us that wants the other sex. And if he insists that he keeps thinking he wants to have sex with that other girl, we have to, as human beings, as a woman who's a human being, she needs to understand, well, he's a guy that just can't get over it. I'm totally free to turn around and go the other way. He's not locking me up in the room. We're not allowing that anymore. Now we have to, no, it's crazy. It's completely unfair, insanely unjust, and nobody sees it. Nobody raises their voice and describes this hysterical, dynamics that we have installed as the mechanisms of judgment, and the law, and the judges, and the lawyers, and everybody is going along with it. It's absolutely. I just feel terrible for so many people. I mean, there's a guy in one of my prison reform groups who was a teenager. No, he was 20. Was he 20 or 19? Whatever. And a girl that was 17, maybe, was at a party where they were all from the same high school, and maybe he had already graduated, but he had gone to the same high school or something like that. And they were drinking, and we know our culture. We know we have these parties and it's all about sex and drinking and ha ha ha. And if nobody says anything, if nobody complains and there was a wild orgy, we're just, so proud of how free we are and look at how much sex we have, and everything's fine then, right? But as it turns out, when the girl started playing games with him and his friend, and I guess his friend really didn't like her, but he did, but she was more interested in his other friend, and so they kind of maybe tricked her a little bit or something like that. I don't know exactly the details, but it was something around this uh, to start having sex with the guy she liked. And she kind of said okay if the other guy was in the room too, and okay maybe if they drank some more, and okay if the guy also touched her, and he ended up having sex with her. And maybe it probably was kind of, if he wasn't her preference, she preferred, it probably wasn't good sex, it was probably lousy and it was over soon or what have you. Apparently the girl just accepted and cutted her losses. um, and the party was over, and then there was a buffer area in which he even bragged and talked about it. This happened, and maybe said things like, "I really didn't want to like this guy, but we ended up having sex too." Probably showing off how she did two guys. But it wasn't violent rape. It wasn't like the guy locked the door or she screamed, "No, let me go, let me go, let me go." It wasn't an assault of this kind. It was just this typical American teenage party kind of situation. Not that every American party has wild sex in it, but you know what I mean. And a few days later, apparently, her mom said, "Darling, that was my blah, 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 blah." They started filling her head, and she turned around and accused him of rape. That guy is serving life in jail right now. Life in jail. He never robbed anything. Did he have a record? I don't think so. I think there was nothing really there. He might have had some misdemeanors, but he was not. He was just. When you see pictures of him, poor guy. Guy that didn't have a father, and he was just trying to be someone, be liked, insecure of himself. Not a criminal, not a thug, not somebody who wielded guns around and stashed guns in his back pockets and getting ready for the next liquor store, and if he has to kill somebody, he'll kill him. He wasn't that. He was not that. This was just a regular American kid, messed up in the head, who drank too much and just thought that the girl was saying yes, and maybe he could have listened a little harder, but they ended up having sex anyways. He didn't rape her in that sense, in the violent sense. It was uncomfortable, bad sex. We've all had it, and we're all not doing life in jail because of it. Well, this kid is. This kid has now. Why did that happen? Social hysteria. Social hysteria that has swallowed up judges, lawyers, court systems, police. We're all trained now to think, to look with a radar, ready to pounce with judgment if anybody defines even language as a rejected advance. So if I'm describing and telling a story, and I'm saying, "Oh, the guy was insistful. He grabbed me by the arm, and then he let him die," and I kept saying no, but the listener to the story is picking up that I didn't have a problem with it, and I ended up having sex with a guy I really didn't want to, and it was almost like rape, and I kept saying no, and we went ahead and did it anyways. But I didn't call it as something I want to accuse and judge to the listener, to the judge, to the police officer, to whoever. Then we're not allowing that person, or we're not giving that person, that judge, that police officer, the go ahead in interpreting that as a condemnable rape. But if I tell another story in which he kept saying this, "I want to rub my tongue up against your neck," and I kept saying, "Ugh," but he kept insisting, and he kept saying that, "How about if we instead go to a singles bar, and then maybe we'll like having sex there," and I kept saying, "No, no, stop it, stop talking like that." I'm instructing the judge or the police officer to interpret my story as something where I was feeling assaulted and offended, as if I was being verbally raped. That is a trigger permission we give lawyers, judges, and people in authority in our society to go after that person as a rapist because we're completely sick, obsessed with morally judgmenting sex. And so if the storyteller makes it seem like this girl did in the Netflix episode, the guy did nothing. He did nothing. He encouraged her in the operation, treated her with respect, put her hand on her. But all of a sudden, he said, hey, and afterwards we can have sex. And made it clear that he really wanted to go on a date. And he makes great omelets. He says to the other doctor, we'll have fun. And then I make great omelets, which is a very cute way of saying, I like you. Maybe you'll like sleeping over with me. Oh boy. We're so uncomfortable with sex, aren't we? I mean, what's so offensive about that? Porn industry is like the biggest video industry in the world, and so all of a sudden, what would easily not qualify as a violent sexual harassment, even language, it does because she decided it must. She decided to tell her friends that his advances were to her offensive and assaulting. And all he did is maybe I make a great omelet in the morning. You're not going to regret it. We'll have fun. In any other circumstance, that would be perfectly fun. That would be a cute way of saying I want to sleep with you. But we have decided to categorize that interaction, that dialogue, as a sexual assault. And then all of a sudden everybody falls in place. Everybody takes on their role of accusers, and now the doctor is a molester, and it's crazy. It's insane. How does nobody see what we have come to? And we're throwing people in jail as if it were a walk in the park. Oh, let's give them life in prison. Oh, it's complete insanity. There is nobody behind the helm. There's nobody. Look at who we have for president. There's nobody behind the what do you call it? Nobody steering this. It's careening out of control. Anyways, that was my punch statement. Ciao.